Hello, my name is George Hosford. I'm a final year student in Digital Humanities and Information Technology in University College Cork, and I am presenting you my final year project. So, my research idea was looking at using GIS and GIS tools to try aid wheelchair accessibility in Cork City. So, GIS standing for Geographic Information Systems, if you don't know. So, think of things like Google Maps and such. There's lots of other tools you can use. And so first thing I did was researched some of the experiences of wheelchair users and the difficulties they face. And the main thing is obstacles they encounter in their physical environment and their day-to-day lives, which can be barriers to accessibility. So one of the main things I found through research and literature, looking through the literature, was that curbs were a major problem. So high curbs or a lack of dropped curbs that allow wheelchairs to exit or get onto a curb or cross a road even, and that those are major issues that are often overlooked and things you wouldn't think of as an able-bodied person that can be a very large obstacle to a wheelchair user. The second thing was parking and finding accessible car parking spaces. So one of the first things I did as part of my project was to create an interactive map of accessible parking spaces in Cork City Centre and also for UCC. So I created this in ArcGIS Online using data from Cork City Council, which is publicly available for the city centre, and then I collected the data for UCC myself, mapping it, going through all the different parking or car parks and finding the accessible spaces. So this map just shows you all the different spaces. It can be useful if you want to find one. And ArcGIS in this app there's a feature so you can type in, let's say you want to find a space near the Cork Opera House, say you're going to a show or something, just for an example, and you can put that in and it will find. So you can implement a range. It'll put in a radius and like a range to find all the spaces in. So let's just put this down to 1 kilometer, and you can use the slider to change the range. So let's say 1.1, and we'll enter that again, and it should find a space that's close. Maybe there isn't one in 100 meters, let's go up to 200 meters. Okay, so find more spaces now. So let's say we'll go to this one. You can see, okay, there's the closest spaces here on Perry Street, and it gives you some information, the number of bays and some details. And yeah, so the next thing I looked at was wheelchair navigation. So one of the main obstacles, as I was saying earlier, is curbs and just navigating through your physical environment. There's lots of obstacles that wheelchair users encounter. So there has been attempts to make wheelchair navigation systems, and usually it's usually just done by, say, with hand collected data by a researcher, and so that's usually over a small area. But in recent years there's been more attempts to create these applications using crowdsourced data for larger areas and using participatory methods. So one such service that uses these kind of methods is Open Route Service. They have different modes for navigation and routing, and they have a wheelchair mode, and this takes all the data, gets all its data from OpenStreetMap. So for the wheelchair mode, it's basically concerned with, or the way it works is that it tries to use footpaths or sidewalks, it calls them, and pedestrian areas as the only acceptable area to generate a route from. And it will also look at a lot of other things as well, which I'll show you in a moment. But first I'll just show you OpenStreetMap. So if you don't know what this is, it's like a free open geographic database. All the features are made by users, and you can create an account and start mapping. So what I did, because it uses footpath data for Open Route Service, a lot of the footpaths weren't mapped in Cork City. So what I did is I went into OpenStreetMap and went about mapping a lot of the footpaths. As you can see here, if you click on this, it's a pavement, and then you tag it with the tags that the routing algorithm looks for Open Route Service, which is highway equals footway. And you can also implement, or you can also put in the width of the footpath, the surface, and also the incline of the footpath in percentage and percentage value for slope. And obviously those are all important details you want to know if you're a wheelchair user. So you can map all those, and the actual algorithm for Open Route Services, the algorithm it uses for routing, will take all these into account. So it will reject things like roads, if there's steps, or if there's a tag for wheelchair, if you put that down as no, that it's not accessible, it will reject that and will avoid that. And yeah, so going back to Open Route Service, once all the data it has, the main part is mapping everything, making sure, because it's only as good as the data has to go off. So once everything is mapped, you can start creating suitable routes for wheelchair users. And one of the interesting things actually is that in OpenStreetMap, just going back quickly, you can create with your footpath lines, you can create with every little node or point, say these little points here, it's called a node, and you can actually map at the edge of them. You can map crossings between, say, crossing a road or crossing a footpath, and that's a different type of way to a footpath, so that's marked as a crossing. And on each node end of the crossing you can mark the curb, and you can actually give the curb height, and or say if it's raised, which is, I think it's a default value of 6 centimeters, but you can actually put in the exact height, and the Open Route Service algorithm will take that into account. And what you can do then in Open Route Service is you can put in a maximum curb height that you're able to overcome in meters, so that's 6 centimeters. That means, but you can put it down to 3 for like a dropped curb, or so with 6 it won't suggest any routes that have curbs that you have to cross that are over 6 centimeters. You can also put in a max inclination for the slope of any hills that you're going to come across, and that's all in percentage values. And you can put in minimum smoothness, so you can see all the different ones there, and a minimum surface type, which are all mapped. All this stuff is mapped in OpenStreetMap when you're mapping the footpaths. And what you'll find as well when you go out is there's a lot of areas where there's many high curbs and not a lot of dropped curbs for crossing, and lots of just narrow footpaths that are not wide enough for wheelchair users once you leave the city centre. But though that's obviously a major issue, and this doesn't solve it by any means, it is just a tool that wheelchair users can use to help try and navigate some of these environments that are obviously not well designed for accessibility. So just for ease of access then, I've created a WordPress site just to host these two features that I created. So I have the interactive parking map, and I have an embedded version of both of them then. So you have Open Route Service here, and you can access these from the website. And if you want, there's also links to the full screen versions as well. So yeah, that's everything. Thank you for watching my video, and I hope to see you at the open day.